Hello and welcome back to another episode of This Round is on Me. My guest today is Jaytirth Ahya. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Okay. The founder of the Experience Co. Jay is an experience designer, and I'm dying to ask him what exactly that entails. But he believes in creating interventions and spaces that enable creators, thought leaders, and movement makers to connect, explore, and collaborate with each other. In the last 8 years, Jay has traveled with thousands of creators across India and Southeast Asia and enabled more than 600 collaborations in the creative community. I can't wait to hear more about this. Join us right after this quick break.
Previously on Varta Lab. After 3 wonderful seasons, Akash and Naveen went their separate ways in search for glory, comedy, and comedy glory. But all they found is long transit time, bureaucracy, and upset stomachs. Now, after 3 years of collecting stories and hustling,
I can't mention. Bullies. There's no need to overact. Bullies.
Akash and Naveen are back at the lab
Let's do it.
with
Stories. We've got stories. They're a little bit of funny and a little bit of December. You wanna hear them? It's got humans. They're sitting in a box and talking bold at Varta Lab. Jay, welcome to the show. Fabulous having you here.
Thank you, Gauri. It's fantastic to be here.
So, what exactly is an experience designer and how did you get into this?
I think experience design came to me at a very, very beautiful time. I was in college and I was making a platform for Indian housewives to connect, discover, and meet each other. And this is pre-WhatsApp era. So there was not a lot of avenues for housewives to connect, and they had so much free time. And my mom was so curious about the world. She would love to know about how Skype works and how Hotmail works. And when I was designing this platform, when I was creating this platform, I came across a field called user experience design, which is one step before designing an interface for a tech product.
Mhm.
And UX design sort of dabbles in psychology, business, technology, and visual design. And at the intersection of this is creating experiences which allow users to use an app or a website or a web app in a seamless way. So if you go on Facebook and you see that notification, icon on the top, and it has a red color, 1 written on it or 2 written on it, why does it have to be on the top right is what UX sort of decides. But when you take user experience design in an offline world, like in restaurants, it sort of converts into service design or experience design. It's about what your user feels, thinks, does when they walk into a space or walks into a hospital or a library or a website. And you can decide that journey that they're going to have with your business, your brand, or your organization. So experience design sort of is a mix of so many different things, and it starts with empathy.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I always tell my team. That's what hospitality is about. People often think, and I've said this on episodes before, that they think it's about food and beverage. And that's actually just a catalyst for what hospitality really is about, which is empathy with your guest that you're welcoming in that day. So I think there's going to be a lot of analogies that we'll draw from each other's work. But what is the Experience Co all about, and where did you take this sort of, how you had the foundation of this idea? Where did you sort of take it to, and what is it today?
I think I never wanted to start a company. I never thought that I'm going to be an entrepreneur or anything of that sort. I was 6 months into my first job as a design intern in Bangalore. And this is 2013-14. And I got an opportunity to go to a really, really cool, curated, creative conference in New Delhi. And in quick succession, I was meeting some really, really fantastic creators who had the potential to change the world. So these are illustrators, artists, photographers. I ran into a 22-year-old girl, and I was like, hey, so what do you do? And she was like, I'm an illustrator. I work with the government in the Northeast to raise awareness about women in the craft space. And I was mind blown on 7 different levels. I was like, you are so young, you're working on something so purposeful and so anchored, and you're working with the government. I don't even know if creativity has a space in Indian government, and you're working on something that is so precious and it's needed. And she was like, yeah. And that was it. And then I run into a photographer from Ladakh who was shooting um, the Indus River and how it has changed course over the years because of climate change. And he was 24 years old, and he was shooting from the last 6 years of his life. And I'm meeting these guys back to back, and I'm like, 1 second, what is going on in this country? So 2013, 2014, Gauri, was a time when you could feel the undercurrent in the creative ecosystem. Parents were becoming okay for us being photographers or chase a life of creativity. And when I met all these guys, like, one of the things that I wanted to do selfishly was to sort of hang out with these intentions and these people who have the potential to change the world. And the second thing that I realized was there are not enough spaces in the country. There are not enough frameworks and ecosystems built around for these guys, which could allow them to take a step back from changing the world and meet others like them who could sort of, help them, support them, or be their hype squad. And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take that up. I'm going to go out and create spaces which are experimental, which are not conferences and not boring coffee meetups. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to create spaces that excite them to step out of their comfort zone, take a break from changing the world, and come and see that there are so many people like them who want to change the world too. And maybe in that process of hanging out, meeting and connecting and going on a road trip maybe together, they would become friends and allies and each other's supporters.
So this when did you start? I mean, this is what's led to what I know as the Beach House project. When did you start that? And can you sort of this is really fascinating what you're saying, and I almost feel like I want to come with you and meet all these cool people. And I think that's sort of like in a very, very small way what's inspired this podcast for me, because I was just meeting cool people, as a part of my day job, and which is running restaurants. And I was like, people need to hear this. There's so many cool people out there, great conversations. I'm learning so much on a one-to-one basis, and I think that it's time to share this with a wider audience. And that's kind of what led to this show. But you started the Beach House project, which is sort of where people were coming in a slightly more immersive experience over a number of days. So when did that start? And take us through one of these experiences, the last one. I know you've been traveling around the world, and you've just got back from running a couple of these projects. So tell us about take us through one of these experiences, and what is it that people can expect or not expect but end up doing.
Sure, I'd love to share about one, definitely Beach House project, and what we started with in 2014 was Road Trip Experience project. So as Experience Co, we run multiple IPs. We run residencies, festivals, road trips, conferences, meetups, but very experiential in nature, very experimental. So RTX, or the Road Trip Experience project, started at that conference, where I was like, hey, it'd be so cool if we can put an artist, a musician, a filmmaker, a photographer, a storyteller, and an entrepreneur in an SUV and send them to the Himalayas. Will they have anything to talk about? Will their worlds collide? Or will they just look outside the window and not care? I come back home and I can't sleep anymore, because I have now come across this insane idea that I want to be a part of more than anybody else. And the only thing I knew how to do back then was to create a website, because I was a designer. Gauri, if you would have seen that website, it was it was such a scam website. Like, the logo was done by me. Like, there is no credibility, no social proof. It was just, but one thing that was special about the website, that it was designed as a call to adventure. It was about, hey, 30 creators are going on this experiential generative travel experiment to the Himalayas to create, discover, and collaborate. And the only difference between any other road trip and this one was that you have to collaborate with the people who are traveling with you and the local communities to create art, film, music, documentary, whatever projects you want to create, but you have to create on the road. And on this journey, we'll sort of meet local communities to whom we can contribute with whatever we know. That sort of took place August 2014. We flagged off outside India Gate on 15th of August. and we went to Lahore and Spiti in North India. And the idea was to attend a festival, a barter festival. The idea was to create a documentary, a music project with musicians in Shimla, and going to monasteries that are like thousands of years old. What came out of that experience was a lot of learnings, and I had no idea how to plan a road trip. We had 3 brands on board, and it was just happening. It was just manifesting on its own. But it sort of like led to the start of this entire journey. It was supposed to be an experiment. It wasn't supposed to be a company or an organization. RTX sort of made me believe that, people need to be brought together. They need to be put in SUVs and they have to be sent to Himalayas so that they can figure their lives out. Today, if you look back on that specific journey, 2 people who met got married. They're still together. 3 of them came together to start their own company.
Wow.
Now we are all part of each other's marriages, each other's birthday parties, but more importantly, we are part of each other's mission and journey. And the kind of people who attended the first road trip were way above my pay grade. I was 24, and I had people who had got government awards.
So how did you get them together? I mean, how did you find these 30 people? Like, was it just people applied on this website and said, hey, I'm interested? Or, was it word of mouth? Like, how did you even curate this group?
So, yes, there was an application form, and it was invite only, so nobody could just come. Once you sort of fill in the application, the second step was a curation call where I would get on a call with them and sort of understand why they want to come. The 5th application form on that application was from someone who I wanted to work with, and I applied to and never heard back from them. That was my biggest validation. I was like, no, this is what I have to do because I learn faster when I'm hanging out with people rather than textbooks. So we got 150 applications in about 3 weeks' time. And all these guys are way above my pay grade. I curated 30 of them, and they were nice enough to show up, and they had no idea what they were signing up for. When they came on the journey, they were all blank slate. They were like, we are coming with no expectations. My way to reach out to them was through Facebook groups, creative communities. There was no Instagram ads then. There was no Facebook ads. I had no idea how those things work. It was purely word of mouth. And we got 150 applications from almost 3 different countries. And the quality of the applications were good. Like, people from Harvard were applying for this. And I was like, wait 1 second, what's going on? So that's how it started, and RTX grew. But I think in 2016, when I was growing as a creative entrepreneur, and I had a full-time job and I had a side hustle, which was RTX, I realized that there are not enough avenues for people like me to level up in life, professionally, personally, or even like skill-wise. Like, my closest alternative to be able to level up was to go to a Harvard summer school or go to Europe for a residency. And I neither had the money nor I had the time to be able to afford it or go for it. And then I was like, 1 second, the best way I could learn is through my peers. So how about we take up a villa somewhere gorgeous, bring 16 creative entrepreneurs, business owners, self-run business owners, freelancers, and let them apply. I'll invite them, I'll curate them, and we'll come together in a villa where we'll have martinis in the pool. We'll talk about life, and most importantly, we'll help each other growth hack our lives. And that's how the first beach house happened. While beach house was still an idea in my head, I was in Goa for another conference, and I just had like 1 evening to finish a recce for finding the right place where, which can actually have the energy to host these gorgeous people. And we care a lot about the spaces we pick and curate. Sure. And I meet and I Google heritage villas in Goa because I didn't want to do it in a 5-star hotel. And I find a villa called Vivenda dos Palicos in Majorda. And I call them up, and they're like, the founder of the villa the owner of the villa was there. And she was like, why don't you come meet me and we'll take it from there. I go to her villa and I walk in, and I'm sure this is it. This is the place. It was a 100-year-old Portuguese bungalow in a small cul-de-sac in a village in Majorda. And I walk in and I meet this beautiful, elegant lady called Charlotte Hayward.
Yeah, I've stayed there. That is so crazy. That is a beautiful villa, by the way.
But wow, what a small world.
I know. Which we also discovered, by the way, with a common colleague and friend of yours.
It's a small world.
It is.
But so cool, Gauri. You've lived there, so you can visualize what I'm trying to say. And you know how Charlotte is.
And her brother, right? Yeah.
Simon.
Simon, yes.
Wow. So I'm sitting with Charlotte and I'm like, listen, Charlotte, we have to change the world. We have to get entrepreneurs together. We have to like get them to talk to each other and like they have to like figure this out. And she was like, it makes sense. I was like, wait 1 second, what? She was like, no, this makes sense. You have to do this. And I'm like, Charlotte, no, I don't believe in it so much. Why are you so excited about it? She was like, no. So I was like, Charlotte, when is the cheapest time that I can rent out your villa for a week? She was like, we'll work that out, Jay, but September would be a good time. I love the monsoons here. And I was like, okay, done. I'll see you in September. This is February 2016. I go back home, and now again I have this idea that I have to put this together. So I make a website because that's what I know. And I make a website, and we had 600 applications.
Wow.
And we collaborated with almost 15 different communities from ISEC to, I don't even remember. There were so many gorgeous communities back then. Some of them still exist. We collaborated with every community, and we were like, okay, we're doing this thing, and you apply, and 600 people like sort of applied for it. We curated 16 and we showed up. And
This is like tougher than a college application, by the way. The chances of getting into one of your beach house projects, it sounds like that. But anyway, sorry, go on.
I think what we're filtering for is intention more than anything else.
Sure.
Because sometimes people get excited, oh, we'll go to Goa and chill in a villa, but that's not the intent. So now we have landed up in Goa, and one of the parts of the beach house was that we will help the local community. That's always been very close to us. So we picked up the problem of solving for the shortage of coconut pluckers in Goa. The whole of Goa has coconut trees everywhere. It's a great natural resource. Everything about the coconut is used in some way or the other. But if Charlotte calls a coconut plucker to pluck coconuts, he might or might not come, and it might take him a month to show up. And if the coconuts dry up, they fall and they can cause damage to the property, or they can kill someone because it's really heavy. So we worked on this beautiful design challenge where we were like, okay, what's going on? Because the second generation of coconut pluckers don't want to be coconut pluckers. So the residency was a mix of working on this challenge and coming up with 100 innovative ideas of how to solve for this shortage. And then we sort of created a solution list and we gave it to the local newspaper, and we were like, hey, if anybody ever shows up talking about coconut plucking, this is our research and these are our ideas. You can do whatever you want with it. So Goa Herald sort of like ended up publishing it. And Charlotte was super happy. She was amazing. That's how the first beach house project happened. And it wasn't coming from a need of, okay, this makes sense revenue-wise. It was coming from a place of, this is what I need, and this is what my friends need, so we're going to just go ahead and do it ourselves. It's been 8 years from the first RTX. It's been 6 years since the first beach house. And every time I still show up for these projects, I'm still nervous just before when people are going to come. But yeah, we just finished the 63rd edition of Beach House Project in Bali.
So you've taken it international now in terms of locations, but you still work with the Indian creative community. Yeah.
Yes, we are currently in Europe, Southeast Asia, and India.
Wow.
It's taken us a while to get here, but we have organically grown. The last Beach House project was in Bali. We had 25 creators, creative business owners, professionals, entrepreneurs, fashion designers, architects, filmmakers, sound healers. And the diversity of every beach house blows our mind, of every RTX beach house. And everything we do, like, it sort of removes that clutter of like, hey, you know what, okay, this is the film track, this is the music track, and everybody go into their own tracks and figure it out. No, it doesn't work like that. Creativity is so horizontal and so non-linear. So you don't know, a sound healer can inspire the next logistic supply chain solution, or maybe a record label producer can inspire the next illustrator. It's open to magic.
Amazing. This just sounds like, I mean, I'm sure you've got like hours and hours and hours of sort of stories like this, like the sort of, the coconut pickers, and it's fascinating, honestly. I want to kind of bring this back to, a brand, right? Because I think what you've done extremely successfully is creating a community for creative people, right? And sort of letting them go out there and figure out how they can, like you said, hype each other and work with each other and inspire each other. coming to like a brand like ours, whether it's the table or say our bakery or even our cafe, it's funny because this idea of community was something, we after all the COVID upheaval, we opened a cafe last year in Colaba called Mac Street Cafe. And I was very clear from the beginning that I didn't want it to be just one more cafe in Colaba. And I was like, what is it that really sets us apart? Of course, there's an expectation of a certain quality of food and drinks, etc. But that's a given, and every place thinks that, they do it well. So what's unique about us? And two of the other aspects that we sort of zeroed in on, one was about being more conscious. So, without trying to become like a sort of 100% sustainable brand, which honestly doesn't always fly in the face of business. We did overtly express a desire to be more conscious. So where it is feasible to do, put that down as something that is part of our goal. And the third bit was community. And in my head, that was about being more than just a cafe where you come and eat and leave, but rather a place that belongs in a certain neighborhood in Bombay and has people coming back again and again, not just because they have a sort of commonality of eating, but also of maybe exploring that neighborhood or widening their horizons in ways that go beyond food and beverage. So, for example, we started out with doing architectural walks around Colaba because even though I've run my businesses there for 13 years, I'd never really explored that from that perspective. We're always on our phones looking down, never looking up at the buildings. And, it opened my eyes up. And it's nothing to do with, again, going back and eating and drinking, but it's just that we hope that the sort of people who gravitate towards our space have an interest in things like this. We now do art walks around. Colaba is a huge art district of Bombay with God knows how many art galleries around there. So, we organize art walks depending every month, because shows change. And again, it's just about providing people avenues for exploring the city beyond what we are known for, which is F&B. And I'm sure there are others doing it, but hey, this is. But coming back to the motivation for this was community, right? And I believe that it is important for brands to focus on building a community. And often we do this inadvertently. We don't realize we're doing this. We don't realize that by putting out a certain product or service, we're sort of, in a way, getting people who, like-minded people who have certain common interests but come from a diverse, backgrounds, etc. But they have this one thing that in common. Now, whether it's an F&B experience, but it's you do end up actually creating a community without realizing it. Tell me why that community and creating a space for people to come together is so important, and how does it actually really help a brand?
Absolutely. Congratulations on the cafe. It sounds lovely. I have to visit.
You do.
I think what you said something so beautiful. You said the intent was to build a community. And I think that's the first step. If Infosys, for example, elevated the lower middle class of India, a huge chunk of the lower middle class of India, and got them to upper middle class, but does that make Infosys a social enterprise? It does not, because the intent wasn't to change the society. Similarly, in communities, if your intent is to build the community first, then you are automatically a community anchor or a community owner or whatever you want to call it. But you are the karta dharta of creating and curating that space. How it helps brands is you cannot... I think when the internet came up, brands sort of started getting away from offline communities and started doing more of online communities. People started building company pages on Facebook. Coca-Cola had 3 million, 10 million followers on Facebook. But, in the last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, like the necessity of building communities offline has come back in. Because you, as a brand, as a service, as a product, as an organization, cannot survive without a community that sort of believes in that intent of you wanting to bring them together. How it helps a brand? Well, in terms of business, there is brand loyalty. There is a purpose to sort of come together over and over again. It allows the brand and product to be visible or to be brought up in conversations. And one of the most beautiful marketing strategies in the world is word of mouth. Communities enable that. For a community to be successful, it needs to have a very strong purpose of why it exists. One of the mornings I woke up and, as creators, as creative people, you always doubt yourself that, hey, whatever I'm doing, is that enough? Is it really required? Like, why do people need to meet in villas and go on road trips together? And I go up to my ex-boss and I asked her that, hey, Shanti, I'm feeling like this. What do you think about it? Do you have days when you don't want to get out of your bed? And she said, Jay, instead of asking yourself, is it important or not, ask yourself that if you wouldn't be doing what you were doing, will the world still be the same place? And if the answer is no, then don't show up for whatever you're doing. So I think building communities is rewarding in different ways. And when you sort of create a space for community to come together, you are opening up possibilities to a level where you won't even know what can come out of it. I hope that answers your question.
No,
Gauri.
it does. I mean, that's the point, that you might be doing it. I honestly didn't. I felt that I was thinking about it differently. I felt that it was a way to get people to feel connected to a certain space beyond the obvious, and feel like, hey, whenever I go out there, or there's always something fun happening, or I meet people that I've somehow connected with, resonated with, and I see people like that repeatedly. I know that when I go there, I'm going to meet like-minded, or not necessarily like-minded in the sense of being sort of cookie cutter, but just that it's a great space to meet, cool people, right? Who have varied interests, and that was the idea. I don't think it was as sort of clear in my mind as to what the outcome would be. But you're right that, it's not done with like, oh, I hope that, this happens out of this. It's just, it's giving people an outlet to get together. And like you said, you never know what comes out of it, right? So, but I think I never really thought of it as what a brand would be leveraging from that, because we'd never really consciously done it. We've never put it out there. So, for example, we have another space which is called Magazine Street Kitchen, where we do a lot of, we have chefs from all over the country and all over the world coming and doing their thing. It's like a blank slate. Every week or every month, there'll be a different chef coming, and they sort of take over the space and do their thing, right? And people come. And we find a lot of people come again and again, because no two meals are the same, right? So they enjoy the experience, they enjoy the unknown of what they might be enjoying that day as a meal, and they just, they love the idea of that experiment, right? So I guess in a way, the fact that there are people who come back again and again to experience something different every time, we're inadvertently building a community around that. How that sort of translates into something beyond the business, I have to admit, like, I haven't sort of figured that out. And I'd love, everyone thinks like, oh, I'm building this great database of people. It's like, so what, like, so then what? And I think that's where I'd sort of love to kind of understand more of where does this go from here, right? Now you've done this, you're creating these great experiences, you've got people coming together. Then what?
So I definitely want to share two things here. One is that with your kitchen where you bring chefs together, I think the hook to come to that place for me for the first time could be that, oh wow, what a cool experiment, like what a nice way to come and like experience food. I might come for that hook, but I'll come again for the community. I'll come again because I feel welcomed and I feel I belong when I'm sitting on that table with a bunch of strangers and tasting food. In 2008, 2009, Lego was going to go under. They were going to go bankrupt. And you know what saved Lego, and it's still one of the coolest companies in the world, is the community. So they created like a way for the community to come and give ideas on what Lego kits that can Lego build for the world. And it was a community of about 10,000 idea creators in the Lego community who came up with different kinds of sets. There was a set on Kalpana Chawla where you could make the astronaut with a Lego piece. So when they crowdsourced these ideas from their own community, they were able to revive the business and make Lego relevant again. Because the kids had moved to a YouTube and, App Store app.
It's so funny, I know we digress, but I was in New York in the summer, and I went to the Lego store, and I had no idea they had this crazy experiential space. And there were just people, including me, who were just spend like half an hour, and actually we didn't want to leave, but then we had to, just creating, it was creating a Starry Night, the artwork using Lego. And there were actually more adults around that table doing that than kids. And I think that's fascinating. Again, I never thought through why that might be, but that is really fascinating. So you never know what the outcome's going to be of doing this, and I think the point is to start and do it with the right intent, like you said.
Yes, absolutely. So just like in your space, the repeat rate would be really high, because when you sort of create a space for the community to come and feel like they belong, I think 90-95% of the people in the world are just running around wanting to be seen for who they are. That's it. And when you give them an opportunity to be seen for who they are, to sit on a table, talk about things they care about, it's amazing. With a community like the Tribe, which we built over, I've traveled with so many people in the past 8 years. The community is about 3,000 people big now, but each of those 3,000 people are rock stars in their own right. We meet for 7 days, and then we go in our different ways. But every time we meet again, the conversation begins exactly where we left it off. And it feels like a superpower right now that I can pick up call on any of those 3,000 people and directly get to the point that, you know what, I want to create this festival. Will you come and show up for it? And they'll be like, yes, we'll be there. So to give you an example, we really, really wanted to step outside our comfort zone. We used to do residencies and experiences and road trips for 16 people, 20 people, intimate groups, which you can sit down and be like, okay, this is how we're going to do this. But in 2018, we wanted to create a festival with 400 people. And I was so scared, because I was like, hey, now I can't facilitate, I can't handhold people to become friends with each other. What if there are negative vibes? What if somebody's like, violates someone's privacy? And I was in Kashmir at that time hosting a residency, and I meet this wonderful gentleman called Balaji, who used to be a festival producer. And I tell him, Balaji, I have a dream. I want to create a 400 people festival. And he said, that's not a festival, that's a house party.
That's an Indian wedding.
That's an Indian wedding. That was 17th of July 2018. 15th of August, my team was ready. And each and every of those 16 members in the festival team were Tribe members who had nothing to do with my business. They were not on my payroll. They were just individual founders, creators that I've met on the journey. And they were like, yes, we're going to build this with you. 6 months from there, we host the first festival of X in Jim Corbett National Park in a beautiful riverside resort. And you know what? It did feel like a house party. It did. It was a 3-night, 4-day of hanging out with, it was like a wedding. Everyone was friends with everyone. So what I'm trying to say is that when you create a space for a community, you're creating it because you want to give. So there is no like, oh, I'll build a community because I'll get more revenues, or because it's strategically aligned to my business goals in the next 5 years. You build a community you empathize first, you understand what your customers aspire to be, and then you create a space for them to be themselves and match their aspirations in that space. And then over time, when you give and you give and you give, they will come, and they'll come in hordes. I think if you really, if the intent is to help someone feel more like themselves, or intent is to help someone grow, if you can talk to that part of people, they will never leave you. And when people come hundreds and hundreds of people show up for you on your journey, and they start throwing a little spotlight on you because you were there for them at the start of when they wanted to grow. And then when they start throwing spotlight on you a little bit, you become a ball of energy because you have now so many spotlights on you. And that's exactly what happened with Experience Co.
This just sounds exactly, I mean, this is, it sounds like the crux of hospitality, like you said right in the beginning, that it's almost like you're in the business of hospitality, where the idea is just to make someone feel really great, give them a space and feel like they belong in that, whether it's the restaurant, whether it's a seat at the table in a at a dining event, wherever, whether it's at an event that, a walking event, but and you just you do it with no sort of expectation of anything, and then it just snowballs from there, and it's really about making people feel good about themselves, and then
And they'll bring their friends and their families and cousins back to our restaurant.
absolutely.
That's the intent, isn't it?
Absolutely. Going back to the people, the community that you've built with, I'm going to say creators, but creative people, right? What I mean, aren't we all creators at the end of the day? And aren't we all sort of creating every day? Whether you think of yourself as a business owner or you define yourself as anything. I mean, doesn't everyone fit into that at some level?
Absolutely, they do. Absolutely. I think it would be unfair to say. I think creativity is something, it's the child in you. It's playing. Creativity it doesn't come with constraints. It doesn't come with job descriptions. It's when you're 5 and you're making a sandcastle, that's the most innocent form of creativity. I really feel everyone's a creator because you're creating stories on a daily basis. For yourself, for the people around you, you're creating relationships. It is such a special, such a privilege to be able to grow older and still call yourself creator and creative, because there was a beautiful quote that said that, hey, you know what, it's the child inside you that didn't die becomes. So yeah, 100%, everyone's a creator. I completely believe that. But creativity sometimes needs to be owned up to. You need to be honest with yourself that yes, I am creative, I am creator. And every time I would talk to my mom, or I would talk to like my masis, or people in my family, and they'd be like, no, Jay, you are so creative. And I'm like, no, but I got this from you guys. So at the festival, I'd invited my entire family, and there was a mandala workshop, and I saw my buddy mummy and my mom sitting and doing mandalas together, and they made the most beautiful mandalas I've ever seen, and I've never seen them hold a pencil in their life. So completely agree with you.
So you mean that it's about unleashing that side of you. We all have it, but the kind of people you work with are those who've acknowledged that and unleashed it in some form or the other. Is that a fair understanding?
Thank you for wrapping that up. Yes, exactly what I mean, that they chose to stand up for their creativity and express. I think expression is important.
We've been hearing about the creator economy, and more so in the last couple of years. The way I read it, and I could be completely wrong, is that previously we referred to them as influencers, and now it's people who are creators, and they are generating revenue from their creative ability, and it feels like, like we said, everyone wants to get into that space. I mean, today, yes, I'm a restaurateur, but, am I a creator because I'm doing a podcast? Am I a creator because I'm a restaurateur? Am I a creator because I post on Instagram and, talk about brands? Like, what is it that, what sort of defines this creator, and why is this, Indian creator economy so relevant today? Like, why are we all talking about this creator economy if at the end of the day we're all creators and doing our respective businesses? What is so special about the creator economy?
Oh my God, what's not so special about this? I think creator economy didn't exist 10 years back. Like, this is so new.
But what is it?
It is, I would say, to define a creator, the easiest way to do that in terms of the digital life is somebody who creates, produces something using their creative capabilities. So it could be podcast, 100%. It could be people who share ideas on finance, people who basically give advice on philosophy. Um, it's about the act of creating anything, basically. That makes you a creator. What has made it so accessible or like almost emerged? There are 50 million creators in the world as we speak. What has made it so accessible and so out there in the last 10 years is the fact that the technology has enabled distribution, which wasn't possible before that. The content that we consume today in one day is the content someone consumed in 3 years of their life, 20 years, 30 years back.
Sure.
So because technology has reduced the entry barrier into this, that's why everyone could be a creator now. People were creating earlier also, but it was not being distributed. So they were just purists. They were artists who would sit in a gallery, and that's why a Van Gogh became famous or a Leonardo became famous after they died.
Yeah.
Because they were not distributed. What's exciting about the creator economy right now is, if you have to define a creator today, it is an individual that can scale without permission. Just how it was very difficult to define what a startup means 20 years back. Is it a business? Is it like few people in the garage trying to figure things out? But I think someone defined startup really well. It's about a temporary organization trying to find a repeatable and a scalable business model, which can sort of like which has no ceiling, and the world could be the
potential
market.
is huge. Yeah.
Potential is huge. Creators, so difficult to define them because everyone is a creator, but it is an individual who can scale without permission.
What's the size of this economy, and how do you even measure it?
So the size of the creative economy, and creative economy is a subset of the creative economy. The creative economy contributes $2.1 trillion
Wow.
to the world's GDP. Across the world, 2 to 7% of a country's GDP comes from the creative economy. What constitutes the creative economy? Films, arts and crafts, architecture. Bollywood is such a prime example of a creative, it's a creative hub, and it's a very beautiful example of a successful creative ecosystem. And so is pop music in Africa, or the jazz revolution in East Berlin. So creative economies contributes $2.1 trillion. It employs 50% of the workforce is women, and it employs the maximum number of people from the 15 to 29 age range. So it's a super young economy. The beautiful part about the creative scene is the fact that it sort of levels the playing field. It sort of internet allows today a talent like me, for example, I'm a designer, I can access the global market and I can quickly come at the same level as my peers in US. No other industry allows this amount of leveling of the playing field. Creator economy, the subset, 50 million people in the world are creators. There are almost, about 5 to 6% of the entire Instagram audience has more than 100K followers. And finally, in the last 5 years, if you have a following, you are able to monetize that following, which is one of the biggest challenges in the creator economy is how do you monetize? But now the ecosystem is developing. There are investors, there are co-working spaces, there are companies like IVM that allows distribution to go further or creates a space like this for us to exist. These frameworks were completely missing 10 years back. But now if you look, there are possibilities, there are avenues, there are opportunities, there is exchange. And then there are companies like Experience Co that sort of allows people to come together and figure it out. And because it's such a new field, nobody knows what is the template. You can't Google how to host great podcast 5 years back, but now you can. And you starting this, Gauri, you come from hospitality and now you're starting, for the last 2 years you have been doing podcasts, you've ran a podcast before. Your intent of getting in touch with this part of you is what we need right now. Because this needs to be put out there. And then you scale without permission.
Very interesting, I have to say. Tell me, like, 3 things you've learned, about creators that have sort of helped them achieve their goals. Like, what is it that you see? I mean, you've come across so many people now over the last 8 years, right? What is a couple of things that you're seeing common, whatever they might be doing, whatever their sort of field of interest is, that is really helping them excel? Like, what are the attributes that you see are, what works for people?
I think the first is start where you are. Like, don't complain about resources. Don't complain about I don't know this, I don't know that. Everything can be learnt. There's access. Your phone has. You can learn anything in the world. So don't complain. Start where you are. If you know A plus B, then just start with A plus B. I knew how to make a website. I made a website, and now we are here. Do not worry about the 10th step, 11th step, 100th step in your journey. Just care about the second step. So I think creators who don't complain too much and start where they are go much longer, and like their journeys are more interesting and more amazing to hear about, because the second step, third step, fourth step starts only becoming visible when you have done the first thing. So if you are somebody who's thinking about starting a podcast, write to Gauri because she's on Instagram, and 2, get the most basic gear and do a podcast. It doesn't matter what equipment you have.
Start somewhere.
Start somewhere. The first podcast will tell you all the things that you should not do on the second one, and that's a good place to be in. That's what RTX was for me. It was such an exciting experience, but so challenging for me because I was the only team member. And it really, really helped me. When I did the second one, I killed it. Gauri. The second thing that sort of really blows my mind about creators that are amazing and how to sort of is that they show up with authenticity. If they don't know something, they accept it. They ask for help. That, hey, Jay, maybe I don't know how to figure this out. And that always, because there are always people who want to help you. So they are very, very confident asking for help, and they show up with authenticity. They show up with honesty. And that's so important. And last but not the least, I think it would be the third one, if I had to like sort of, there's so many, but like if I had to put down, would be that don't give up on curiosity. If something about something made you curious, have the courage to go after it, dig a little deeper. Don't just let it be. Because those moments of brilliance in your life, they happens once, twice, maybe 5 times. And if you let it go, then I don't know what are you going to chase. So the creators that I've met in my life, the people who have blown my mind, and sometimes you look at them and you're like, how are you even possible? Like, how do you even think like this? Has these 3 or 4 different things.
Personality traits, yeah. I mean, because like you said, any individual can really unleash this potential and now has the ability to distribute and scale, etc. We do know that it's becoming at least say in the digital space, it's becoming a hugely saturated space. And maybe not saturated, but it's definitely, there's been a huge influx of people who consider themselves creators, etc. I mean, how do you start, differentiating or surviving in this space, which is clearly being flooded every single day because of the low barrier to entry? So, what would you tell someone who wants to stand out in this space? And I don't mean just Instagram and that, but just anything. It could be you could be a photographer, you could be a I don't know, an artist or anything. Like, how do you start kind of sort of putting yourself out there and weaving through this mass in a way, right?
Absolutely. No, that's a fantastic question, because it can be overwhelming. It does get overwhelming.
And it can kind of put you off starting as well, right? Because what you said is so important, to just get started. You might just be like, oh my God, but there's so many of whoever, like podcasters out there, like who's going to listen to me? So how do you kind of cross that barrier, first of all? And, how do you think about it where you don't get sort of impacted by the fact that there's so many other people doing possibly the same thing?
Absolutely.
Or what seems like the same thing.
I think if you quickly do a small exercise with yourself and you ask yourself 3 people that you absolutely love following. It could be on a newsletter, it could be Instagram, it could be YouTube channels, it could be whatever, where you consume them or consume their content. you will come to realize that what you sort of are attracted to as a consumer is their uniqueness. It's like, okay, 755 people in the last 1 hour has said that be unique, be amazing, be authentic, all of this. But whom is it coming from, and why does it make sense to you when a particular person says be unique? Is because of the uniqueness and like, them presenting themselves just the way they are. And because everybody has the permission to scale now and the access is absolutely free, the only thing that can help you stand out is your own unique self. And I think that's what you need to lean on when you're starting in on your journey. When I was starting the road trip experience project, I did not look up other road trips that happen in the world. I did not see Dakar Rally or a global Himalayan expedition. I didn't see any of it. I was like, dude, I need to go on this road trip. I want to do this. So I'm going to create this for myself. So in the beginning, create for yourself. And if you enjoy it, then so be it. Then that is the outcome that you have to tie yourself to, and not, oh, where does this going to go next? So don't tie yourself to the outcomes. Create.
It's funny. This is sort of the thought process with the restaurant as well when we got into it, because neither Jay, my husband's also Jay, neither he nor I had the restaurant background. And when we got into it, it was literally motivated by what we wanted in a restaurant. And we were like, I'm sure there are others who feel the same way. And it literally, but I think we didn't think of it like that. Now in retrospect, I can say this, but that was what was going on in our heads, which is that, hey, we were not the first restaurant in Bombay, obviously. There were hundreds out there. And it was literally creating something for ourselves, which we just felt, will draw like-minded people. And you, I think, have to, which I have to admit, I kind of maybe didn't have initially, and he had more of that. But you really have to believe in that idea, not that how many people there will be or how big it's going to become or any of that, but believe that, what you want to do is completely valid, and that there will be some people, and you don't know how many there are till you start. So it goes back to that point of starting. So I think you've answered the question. Is that believe in yourself and what you bring to the table, and
that's more than enough.
And then
that's
start.
I promise you, that's more than enough.
Yeah.
And it's so cool that you tag team with your with Jay, and you guys did this together. I think it's so important to have the right people when you're starting out on a journey, who can support you with the right, I would say, the right energies. Because
but that doesn't always happen, like you said, you have to kind of figure it out along the way. It doesn't always fall into place from day one. And but you have to do that. We've had in our business times when things haven't gone to plan, and then you just kind of, okay, you're like, maybe I need to take a different route to move ahead. But you have to be sort of open to dealing with that, because it will happen.
And that's part of the journey.
What are some of the challenges you faced, in doing this? It sounds like it's all been going great, but I'm sure there have been some. Have there been any roadblocks?
Roadblocks, 100%. The 6th hour into my first project ever, which was RTX, I go on the wrong way. It's a convoy of 6 cars, and I had to go on the Chandigarh highway, and instead I went on the Amritsar highway, and all the other 5 cars were together. And when I went on the Amritsar highway, there was no we only had 2G back in the days. So we couldn't figure out that we have to go the other way. I was 2 hours late to where we were supposed to meet. I reached there and I'm like, thank God, now everything's going to be fine. And I get out of the car, and this girl comes up to me who was a local, and she was like, the bridge to Manali has broken down because of the monsoon, and we'll have to stay here for the night. And I am 24, I don't have internet, and I have 30 people to take care of. And because it was self-drive road trip, they said that, but anyway, that's not the point. The challenges are going to be part of it. The first time when I came back home from the first road trip, I promised myself that I'm never going to do this again. I don't want to make new people meet each other. I don't want strangers to connect and become a family. Like, who the hell cares? Because it was so difficult. Like, if this is my comfort zone, I was 7 kilometers, 10 kilometers out of that space for the entire of 9 days. we faced challenges in terms of funding the project, because they were like, oh, so you're going to go have fun and you want our brand to pay for it? And I was like, yeah, that's pretty much what I'm asking for. It took me almost 70, 80 different brand meetings to understand how brands really work. Why would they sponsor something? It took me so much time to figure out a catch-22 in my business. Like, if I had to do more projects, I had to hire more team members. To hire more team members, I needed to make more money. And to make more money, I needed more projects. So, sometimes businesses get into that space where you can't break out of that catch-22 situation. And we always wanted to be bootstrapped. We have picked no funding from investors. We have actually refused funding because we wanted to build it our way. So it was about doing a full-time job and coming back home and doing another full-time job, and then asking for leaves when I had to go on these projects. So it was like the first 3-4 years where, and people were like, this doesn't make any sense business-wise. Like, why? I think it was the 3rd month into planning the road trip. And I'm sitting, Gauri, this is very, very important meeting of my life. I was sitting with a spoken word artist in Costa Cafe in Bangalore on 12th Main Road, and I really respected him a lot.
Troy, so go ahead.
So yeah, this is a very important meeting of my life. 2 or 3 months into planning RTX, I was meeting people and I was telling them about my idea just to sort of get a sense. And I meet this gentleman called Troy, who was a young freestyle poet, and he used to run a company in India called Brain Gain, where he would get talent from abroad to come and work with Indian startups. So I meet him and I tell him about this idea, and he's like, wait 1 second, are you saying that you want smart, talented, busy people to come together to you for 9, 10 days, 14 days of their lives and pay you money for that? I think, no, Jay, that's not how it'll work. You'll have to pay them for their time. And I was like, that, how will I even pay 30 people to just come and hang out with me? I was sweating so profusely in that meeting that I was completely, my white shirt was transparent. I come back to the office and I'm like, I don't know what, that, because he made so much sense. That why would smart, talented people go out of their way and travel from Ladakh and show up at a residency or show up at a road trip? But now when I look back, glad that he shared that with me, because I sort of refined my business model. I refined my communications. But yeah, now very smart, talented, some of the smartest people in the country pay money to show up for these residencies. So it's crazy.
Very interesting. You work with brands as well, right? In terms of helping them, I guess, build communities. And I've heard you say that brands need to think of themselves as creators. How does that happen? What is it? How do you work with a brand, and how does that sort of mindset shift happen?
So we've been lucky to work with brands that we really resonate with. We are a brand-free company otherwise. Our revenue models are not brand-dependent. But we work with brands because we enjoy the amplification that it brings in terms of intent and distribution and stuff. We have got more than 6 awards, from AVI to IAMAI awards. We have been recognized by Incredible India. But to give you an example, when we were doing this road trip with Mahindra, and Mahindra is a very legendary elephant company. They're very safe about how they like to talk about their cars. And we were working with the XUV 500 team, and our pitch to them was that there are 16 creators on the trip. The 17th creator is the XUV 500, because it's also creating stories. And it was so cool because the tagline for XUV 500 happens to be maybe your life be full of stories. So when we took that car and put it as a 17th creator, and we personified the car into a creator itself, we were able to create some insane content where the car is becoming part of art projects, helping communities in Odisha, going and visiting temples that need boats, so on and so forth. What I essentially mean that brands need to be creators themselves is that you have to personify the brand into something that is more I would say, relevant, more easy to connect, basically. So when I show you a car and it's a product placement, you're not emotionally connecting with that persona. But if I personify that into something that you relate with, then you see the car as a friend who takes you on these journeys where you're just living your life and making stories happen.
How would you do this in a service space? And I'm asking obviously selfishly,
Mhm.
but how would you kind of translate that idea into any kind of service industry?
I would say we'll start with empathy again. And there's a very beautiful framework in experience design or service design called the customer journey map, where, for example, when you are sort of feeling a little sick and you have to go to the hospital, you're thinking about the hospital before you even get to the hospital. So, as an experience designer, I can start your customer journey from the moment you feel a little sick and then sort of build out a journey of what happens when you book your cab when you're coming to the hospital. Then once you enter the hospital, I already know that you're a little stressed out, so I can create a space where you can have a time to sit down, um, and make it super easy for you to exactly know which doctor, where you have to go, make navigation easy. So when you go to a music festival also, for that matter, yes, the DJs and the performers and the producers and the electronic music and the speakers are important, but the actual rock stars for me in a music festival are the people who sort of make sure that the queues don't line up, the bathrooms are clean, and there's easy way to navigate. So if I had to sort of create a persona or create this for a service, I would build a beautiful customer journey map, and that would allow me to understand that what a customer is thinking, doing, feeling, seeing when they come to your restaurant. And I would create an intervention at every touch point that the customer might have, right from the first time they order or look at the menu all the way till they leave the restaurant, and then also try and design what they'll tell their friends about the restaurant they come to. So maybe leave them with, I don't know, like a small thing in the end that no restaurant generally does. Because when the customer or when the user feels that they have been thought about, that's when that brand loyalty will build.
Yeah.
And that's when they'll go and talk about you to 5 other people. Because why do people share? People share because of 2 reasons. One, they want to look smart in front of their friends. Or 2, they felt that they were taken care of.
They felt good. Yeah.
Felt good. When do you feel good? When someone thinks about you. So the technical way to do this is a customer journey map, but the outcome is that the customer feels that, okay, you know what, Gauri and Jay have put so much of little details into this, they have put a thought into this, and that's what I really appreciate about that place.
True. Very true. What's next for you?
A few things. Very, very excited. It also includes falling in love. What's going on personally. With work, we are launching an app called Potential in 3 months' time. Potential, basically, the core purpose of it to exist is to help unlock potential of organizations, brands, and human beings. And there are only 2 things that you can do on the app. You can find people that you should meet in this life at least once. And the second thing is opportunities that you need to consider if you want to step up, level up, get outside the comfort zone. So just 2 things. And you can chat with the entire tribe and the entire community. Gauri, I'm going to add you to the app.
Thank you.
So you can catch up with all these babies, my babies. And the second thing is we are strongly expanding into Europe. The third thing is we have just launched a new IP called Bucketlist, which is, the thesis of that is to create access to experiences across the world, like going with a bunch of creators and founders from across India to a music festival in Europe, or to sort of go dive in Bali, or to sort of go do a road trip in Finland. So we feel that creators and founders, if they want to broaden their horizons, broaden the way they look at their businesses, or even look at hiring, building culture, hacking growth, they really, really need to be able to take in new experiences, because that expands them. And we all are travelers, and we've all traveled, but like when you do it with people who are a little crazy and cuckoo, you see the world from a different angle. Because a musician perceives the world and sort of converts that into music knowledge versus an artist would see it differently. So we want to create access to experiences that can help you broaden up and go make some stories across the world. So Bucket List just started 3 months back. We have finished 3 journeys with it already, and we are currently in Southeast Asia and Europe with that. So we are now fully expanding, not growing. We are expanding now because we are, like, I think growth is a very 2D concept. Like, you can put growth on a XY graph, but expansion feels 3D. And it feels like we are expanding as creators ourselves. And 3 months back when I was in Berlin for the Beach House project, I got a very strong reminder that I had completely forgotten for the last few years. and that was to not forget to play. So I hope 2023, I hope the next few months, next few years for me is like I can create a space for my team and myself and my community to play in their lives, because creativity dies as soon as you stop playing with it. As soon as it becomes an operational headache for you, it'll crash. So I'm sort of creating a small delegation module that I can teach creators, or that I can pass on to creators, about how to get out of operational nonsense and figure out 20-30% of your time to play.
I need that in my life.
All of us do, Gauri.
Listen, this is so much fun, and your energy is infectious. It's amazing. I'm really excited about all these things that you're talking about, and I'm definitely going to go look it up as soon as we're done. But we're going to have a quick break before we enter the last segment of the show, which is a fun rapid fire.
Hey everyone, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus is joined by Shad and Ayushi to discuss India becoming the second largest gamer base in the world and Arijit Singh's concert tickets priced at 16 lakhs. Good news for all the Bollywood buffs out there, we bring you a brand new quiz show. It's called Just a Filmy Game Show. Join host Antariksh Thakkar as he quizzes contestants competing for the title of the biggest Bollywood Divana or Divani every Saturday. Episodes available on the IVM Pop channel. On Nankari, Sadaf and Arshid are joined by American chef and podcaster Keith Sasarin. They talk about how our eating habits are connected to our mental health. And on Pulyabazi, the hosts dive into the world of public policy in India with Professor Ajay Shah and his book In Service of the Republic. Once again, do not forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. Y'all can find some really cool and exciting stuff over there for you and your loved ones. Do follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, then do spread the word. You know, it really helps us a lot. And of course, do not forget to rate and review our shows on whatever platform you are listening to them. And do check out youtube.com/IVM Podcast for all our video shows. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week, Bumble, Kotak Privilege Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back, and Jay, we're going to talk about all things different from work and play, as you said. So just a few fun questions. What's your go-to comfort food?
Mom's khichdi.
I knew it, khichdi. Like, only the 100th person on this show who said that. I love it. It's so funny. Everybody says khichdi. A great book you've read or podcast you've heard, if you listen to them in the recent past?
Book, Hard Things About Hard Things. Podcast, I don't remember the name, but it's on mental health by this really cool neuroscientist in Stanford. And it sort of deconstructs mental health and exercises. But I'll share a link with you guys for sure about that. But Hard Things About Hard Things, I love that book because I'm I would say, sometimes you overextend yourself as entrepreneur. And this book sort of like puts things into perspective. Like, you have to do hard things to get a business going. So I love that book.
We'll look it up for sure. What's the best investment you've made in your journey?
Human beings, people, investing in their growth. As simple as that. Their dreams and ideas and aspirations. Yes.
Any role models or mentors you've had along the way?
I don't have role models, I don't have mentors, but I have a soul keeper that sort of makes sure that I don't forget my why of why I started this. Is Raghava KK. He's an artist, extraordinary artist, international artist. He also is the first artist who sold the first NFT with Sotheby's New York from India, based out of Dubai now, and his work is out of the world.
Amazing. What's your definition of success?
That when you're at the airport and there's a huge line in the normal check-in counter, you can move over to the next counter and just pay for business class. I think it's about having the liberty to be able to not think in small situations like that. If I can do that for myself, where I can experience life fully, and not think about smaller investments like these that sort of make my life better, I think I'd be successful.
What would be your message to creators?
You really, like, whatever you're thinking is possible. Whatever you're thinking is possible. If you can just take the first step. Just take the first step and then we'll meet you at the second one. I promise.
That's lovely. Listen, thank you so much for being on the show, and I really wish you all the best with everything you're doing and everything that's yet to come. And it was really great having you here.
Thank you so much, Gauri, and thank you for putting a little bit of sense to my wild thoughts sometimes. I really, really appreciate this. Thank you.